Hi there. Welcome to Module 3 Assembly Drones Technology. Drones fun to fly and fantastic to make money. I'd like you to move my face away and try to see whether you see all the screens better. This module is 3. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to start with mathematics. And then, having said that, in earlier modules, I made it very clear in different ways that if I can understand the mathematics, that means it cannot be even, it's so simple, it cannot be called even mathematics. Anyway, I'd like you to see this screen over here. It shows kV is equal to RPM on 1 volt. Now kV you might have seen close by high tension towers. So in other words, where nobody should go anywhere near unless they want to get become charcoal instantaneously. Or should I say that kind of nasty jokes? I'm a teacher, right? But anyway, here what kV means something different. That means RPM, of course, as you know, revolutions per minute. If you give to the motor just 1 volt, how many times it will revolve? That is what it signifies over here. So in quadcopters, of course, we have 4 rotors. The speed itself may not help us to lift the weight from the ground. To make it understand better, I would say if you think about your car, if you are doing an incline, if you do lower gears, it helps the car to move up. And even your automatic car, you have other gears which gives you more pulling power. And even let's think if you are towing a boat or some other load behind, towing something, that means lower gear helps. Or but at this point, if you can understand that there are other things that go into the motor, enabling it to lift off the ground, take more weight, at least your thrust, being able to give more effect of lifting the weight. So that's about kV description. And then I would like to also say about the watts. You would have come across all the time watts of whatever the electrical equipment that you use, maybe the iron to close ironing clothes, or any other electrical thing, maybe the toaster or whatever. So and it shows over here watts is equal to V multiplied by I, that is voltage into amperage. I hope the word voltage I pronounced properly. Okay, and then you have AH. AH means ampere hours. So what does that mean? That means at the rate of 1 ampere, energy flows through a total of 1 hour. That's the energy that has flown through. This is very important with our batteries that we're going to hook up in our drones. I'm going to show you this battery. If I can bring up the picture of the battery. Why it does not? Alright, let's see the photo. And then, oh yes, that is the battery I want to show. Let it be over there, because now we got the idea of what is watts and what is kV means. And I'm going to bring your attention to ESCs now. Every motor, as we discussed earlier, you need an ESC, electronic speed control, to control the speed of the motor. And the motor itself will give you the maximum current that it will draw, and you have to keep the ESCs a little above that, at least between 1.2 and 1.5, the maximum current of the motor. Let's say the motor is drawing 20 amps, you have to keep at least 24 or 30 amps per motor. And then because it's 4 motors, if one is drawing, well, we are only bringing in these numbers so that it's easy to calculate. Let's say, for example, one motor draws 20 amps, in times 4 is 80 amps. So then for us to select the battery, we have to think there's another figure called the charging rate or the discharging rate of the battery. I don't think you can see it in this diagram. Of course, you have in the figures this figure number. I will give it to you. Also, it shows 20 to 30 amps charging rate or discharging rate. So if you have 80 amps drawing within the 4 motors, and then you have to have, let's say, you can go with 3S batteries or 4S batteries. 3S has about 11 volts and 4S about 14 volts. This S means, S simply means that the number of cells in serial configuration. So then if you want to put in a battery, you have to make sure that it can draw this amount ampere hours into C. So in other words, this battery has ampere hours of 5 ampere hours. 5000 milliamp hours means 5 ampere hours. And then it has the discharge rate of 20 to 30. 30 is the start of it. You have a discharge because motor needs more current, inertia current. Motor has inertia. Because of that, it draws a lot at the start, but then the regular draw would be about 20. So if we get this could be the ideal, I would not say ideal battery. This battery will do the job, because why I didn't say ideal means you have to consider the weight of the battery also, as it's a flying object. And then if we can get a battery even lower weight, it will be sufficient for us. But in fact, what we will go through another point over here. There was another battery, 3.3 ampere hours, that would have been more suitable. We could have used that, because we have to deal with only 80 amps. So we can even live with that ampere hours to deal with our situation. Ampere hours into charge rate, and we have to be able to meet the 80 amp demand. So this battery is sufficient, but if I had 3.3, I would have gone for that, because it'll be still sufficient, and it would be of a lower weight. Means we are flying things. And also I like to add to this, I was talking about the thrust and calculating the thrust to weight ratio. And this if you don't see this properly, don't worry about it. We have it under module 3 figure 2. You already know whatever audio we give, later on somebody can go and the student can go and check on the website. The thrust is we have to keep the weight that we are going to lift with the thrust that we have, like half of it. So in other words, the weight you have, let's say we can get with all if one motor gives 800 grams of thrust, let's say for example, then with the 4 motors we have a thrust of 3200, but the weight it can lift is half of that. That is only 1600. So the equation, if you think, is weight times 2 thrust you should have. So without even going into all these calculations, if we remember that, we should be able to calculate what kind of a battery that we need to have. And then I in fact have made a list of the basic tools we need, and also for the first drone that we're going to put together, the list of parts we have, that is under module 3 and module 3 figure 1. Module 3 figure 2 will have this audio in text form. So we are getting more organized. We are in good shape. What I would say is, on the list of stuff, if you think about what we want to put together, before I even go into that, let's talk about the soldering part. I am going to bring out a few pictures here. Let's do a little more clearly. This one, you have, that's a picture with somebody is doing soldering over there. And why I say that is, we have to get over the soldering hurdle, because if you are not used to soldering, it's see, I'm going to show different see, this is a different a difficult soldering position. This one, let's say, this one is difficult soldering because you got to lift this plate and solder underneath, and you got the helper person or helper gadget over there, and look at that, everywhere you. And then I'm going to show you over here also another position of soldering over there, and then let's pull up another one over here. I'm going to do that in a moment. Yeah, different kinds of soldering. Let me pull this one also up for some other soldering. Managers. Another soldering point over here. So already show it may not be coming up. Solder. Switch to. Okay, there's another soldering point over there. So if you think about the soldering part, it's unless you are used to it, somebody would have to get used to how to do the soldering. And I didn't get into guiding people on the soldering part, because it's already there. You go to YouTube, you go in the internet, so many different lessons to show people how to show anyone how to solder. So if I did again and just get a lot of time of you just to show that, we are not really achieving very much. So because of that, I have put in the links, a few links. Even other than that, just go into different website, go into YouTube and study how you do soldering. But I'm going to bring out a few points and guide you on the soldering thing. That much we have to do. If I put it this way, we need to before we start soldering, we have to, let's say you take the gun and you have to very well clean it with a sponge, or that's very important. And once you get used to soldering, or as you see in these points, when you see from the feeling alone, you know whether the joint was a good joint. And yes, in USA, it's you call it a cold soldering joint if it is not proper, and British terms you call it dry joint somehow. So that is important to find to do your soldering and get a total hang of soldering. And while I say that, I also would let you know if anybody has been in maybe in technical arena, in military or telecoms or anything, who has done soldering. Here's a good chance to make money, because if you know soldering already, you can just scrap that step altogether and get on to the second step we have described over here. Is think of it, we'll have to put a drone together. Think of it like your school project. That means for you to get used to which websites to go into, get the proper parts, the matching parts and everything, and get things lined up. So you do it as a school project, because and if you don't know the soldering, I'm sorry to go back and forth, but one thing I forgot. What you could do is get hold of some electronic thing, or in Radio Shack for $35 there's a small drone that you can put together. So for a person who is new to soldering, that's what I would suggest. Buy that thing and buy the soldering gear. In fact, soldering iron, here's what I got to say about soldering iron. There are soldering irons for even $200 or more, even for $20-30. So one thing I would say very crucial, you would not be able to be just because you have an expensive gun, you don't become a good person who can solder properly. So it's practice, and know the proper techniques is very, very useful. For example, now in this, if you want to combine two wires and solder, you can do it two ways. You can get all the strands going on all different directions, at least opened up. Then you can put it together and you can twist it. Or I'm not holding this to the camera, right? What's the point, right? You can you can open up the strands, uh, open up and just put this together. I didn't really open up, put this together and then twist it before you do the soldering. Or else you can do it this way too. You can put them together and then solder. Either way, that's when you keep doing it, you will get the knack of it. And printed board thing, yes, you can get a printed board from one of your junk piece of equipment, maybe a telephone, maybe a mixer, maybe anything that you household appliance. Open it up and get the thing. I would even go to my next door and ask for a thrown away printed board thing, an appliance. And meanwhile, I might even sell my first drone to my neighbor. That one we gotta be a little careful, because if you are selling to the neighbor, it better be top notch, because otherwise you will never hear the end of that. That is, I went back to the soldering person who does not know soldering, and if you somebody known to you who knows soldering, you can get on to the second step, as I said, start on what putting together one drone as a school project. So you study from step one, starting from buying the required list of items. Speaking of list of items, let us do a little more on that. And of course, you have to buy the motors. We'll give you more guidance on that in terms of what to buy, and the motors are listed on Figure 3, Module 3, Figure 1. On the list, you got the 4 motors you want to buy, and the propellers. You have to buy the matching propellers. At the moment, we will suggest 2212 or 2226 motors would be a good thing. If you get the frame 450, that would be a good match. And then the ESCs, only get Simon K or BL Heli ESCs. That means electronic speed controls. In fact, speaking of which, we were talking about one electronic speed control per motor. Now there is the latest is you have 1 4-in-1. In other words, you have one controller controlling all 4, but still what we talked about, the current that it can handle, it comes into the same equation. If one is that would have a current rating may be possibly equal to 4 of a single motor current rating. So, and I think you definitely got the drift on that. And even the power distribution board, they don't use it anymore. I have listed out the power distribution board, and now you don't even need that for some of the kits. So this is one of the things you got to remember. The technology keeps moving. That's why I didn't specify, okay, go and buy this motor, but a better motor would be available at a cheaper price. So this first drone that we put together as the step 2, you have the flexibility of deciding which drone to go by, and experiment it out a little bit, to starting from putting it together, starting from programming it through OpenPilot, and then you got the OpenPilot, and what's the other one? Beta Flight, and also Flight Mission. All these programs are really user friendly. If I find it user friendly, I'm sure the younger people will find it very user friendly. But then I also listed on programming the free sky Taranis, and then I marked out a few very essential things that you have to go in and do the program. That's under module 3 figure 6. I've laid it out, but we will talk a little more on that also in the course. And then we will try to, if I go through the list, then you got the you have to get the 4 matching propellers. Some other matching some other propellers has the cut portion, some of them the twisted type, so it has to match with the motor that you buy. I'm sure it's not that difficult to figure out, so to buy the proper thing. And let's power distribution board I talked about, and the bullet connectors also, if you are using individual ESCs, you can to connect the two, that's also listed out. And heat sinks is needed to in so many application levels, you need that. And then I'm going to show the neatness of our this thing is also very important. See how neatly. Let me show you another one. Let's see. Not that one. I have another one for you to show. See how neatly he. Okay, let's do some. Oh, that's nicely moved. All right. Look at that. How nicely he has cut that. Okay, let's see how we can. So likewise, what I'm trying to, at least there, my message is your workmanship should be top-notch quality, because you're putting your drone to somebody else's hands. Two things you gotta worry about, at least basically. One thing I forgot to mention is your disclaimer. When you are a responsible person, you put the drone together, you did the testing, and you did your test flights, everything according to rule. But when it gets into the hands of another person, you cannot be responsible for whatever ill doings that happens with it. So you have to have a proper disclaimer with talk to your lawyer about it. And the other thing is, on the technical standpoint, we're looking at the drone, or somehow they don't. The end user should get the impression you have done a good job, not a shoddy job. So that's important. And right throughout the course, we show to be how to get yourself up to the mark on that. So so many pictures we will put on over there to show that. And let's see some of these things. Okay, look at that. Why did I put this? This becomes a good helper for you. In other words, I would go for these are cloth pegs. I would go for even the wooden one. Wooden one particularly good when you do the soldering, and it will handle more heat than this. A combination of this you can of course buy a dime a dozen in one of the supermarkets, and combination of a few of them will take care of your holding and helping the project while you are doing it. Mostly I suggest those things in terms of spending for your harness, or spending money on your equipment. You have to go very low. For the fact of the matter is, technology is changing so fast. So you don't want to go and invest on a major test harnesses and all that, we are in a very shortly the technology will change, and you have invested the money and you cannot get it back. We don't want you to be in that. So now see, what am I having here? Of course I got the multimeter. I say, tell you, if you have two multimeters, even I like it, because have one for the workshop and have one in your car, because when you go to fly, and then there I do. Okay, you go to fly, take the drone to the flight testing, and then something happens, you want to check, you have the multimeter. It's always good to have the multimeter, you can check it. And okay, so we went through half of the list. Let's complete this list. Formatting propellers you have to get, or distribution board we talked about, heat sinks we talked about, and battery also we discussed the battery in detail. And what you call the Loctite is the gum that you seal all the screws. That's important. Now I'm very much used to this aircraft mounting. When you mount stuff in aircrafts, you use split spin, tab washer, spring washers, and all that means you are tightening them properly. And even what you call the wire lock. Wire lock is every nut, especially in the engines. You got the wire, steel wire going in and locking it with just the pliers and things like that. But my message here is even hot glue helps. Definitely I have put the hot glue also as an item that we should have. You should have it in your workshop, because to tightening things properly is very important. Because always remember, this is an airborne thing, flying thing, so it should handle the vibration and all that. So what else? Double-sided tape is commonly used, is very useful. Electrical tape, sometimes to balance the propeller you might want to put the electrical tape, but one person, it is not my particular experience, one person said, if you are using electrical tape, be careful, it can open up, and once it open up, and it can the propeller can hit it and come into a dying flight pattern if that happens. So that we have to be careful. And solder, if I would recommend the lead solder for a start. It's easier, so it's much easier to solder with lead solder. But I also would warn you to have your blower, fan, or window open, because nobody wants to be inhaling lead for a long time. And then once you are good in soldering, you can switch over to silver, so as against lead. And then I reiterate, using the flux pen for soldering flux. Initially I also didn't take it seriously, but flux helps to keep the solder in melting point for a little longer time, and it penetrates through the wire. So that again helps to make a solid soldering joint. Once you get the knack of it, just by looking alone, you can say whether it's a good soldering joint or not. We discussed the transmitter and the programming part, and one other thing, before I even open up the module, I should have said that when you are on your testing, leave the props off the motors. You do not want to have it inside, have the props on, because the damage it can do is very, very high. and we discuss about that soldering iron. We discuss part, and then you have the other stuff that you have is the pliers, the cutters, the um, tie wraps, cable wraps, zip ties, all means the same thing, and battery strap. My advice is, if ever possible, instead of putting one battery strap, put two, because battery is a heavy thing compared to the weight of the drone. So it always can get. I have seen a lot of videos and notices that batteries do fall out, so you don't want that. And an adapter and our SMA connector is also you can see it in our diagrams. SMA connector, you can have a few 90-degree ones, L-shaped ones, because sometimes you have it in there in the drone that has come with the kit, but very difficult to do to get the antenna where you want it to come out. So 90-degree angle SMAs help on that, and the spacers or standoffs or spacers, that's useful to have in the workshop. Hex drivers, Allen keys, very important. Tweeters we already have, and as the third part of assembly module, I will have to. I want you to go and assemble 10 drones at one time, at least. This is not a scare tactic. Let's say you have your tiny assembly line going up. You are not harming anybody, because it doesn't take that much space. When you streamline that, when I say 10 units, I don't really mean like it's a you have to lay out all the 10, not only all the 10, you'll have to buy a lot of you have to invest a lot of on parts. What I mean is, you can leave out the transmitter and leave out the battery, which are high ticket items, but you can get the other stuff and start your assembly plant in a very tiny way. Believe me, you can do it. And here's the thing: if you set on assembling 10, just sell one for me. That's all I ask. Just sell one for me. Am I asking too much? No. Yeah. And the rest of the 9, I will show you how to sell them with once you do the marketing program with the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and any other social media that you are in front of. Once you do the marketing, I will show you how you can sell the rest of the 9. So it's not a bad deal to start on, and few other steps I want to discuss on this. I need to show you this. Look at this. This one I particularly put it out. Let's get this camera nicely focused on this. How clearly would you see this? In fact, what you see over there is a motor, and you are putting the holding bolt or holding screw, and make sure it does not penetrate and come anywhere near. I cannot say anywhere near, it's always near, right? But it should not hit the winding. Why I particularly say that I'm very paranoid about it is many people, even RC Andy, hey, he's a very experienced guy from Great Britain, and he has put out a number of good YouTubes in his channel. And honestly, I should thank him. I picked up a lot from him. and he explains where he assembles the whole thing. He goes into details of buying the correct part and everything. And he was skeptical about parts failing, but nothing failed. Absolutely nothing failed in his whole assembly. But the one of the screws were touching the winding. So look at things that can go wrong. You cannot even think. You take all this extra care, but a complete unknown thing can give you trouble. And speaking about when you get stuff from, particularly from China, no hard feelings now. I'm not putting down any country, but you have to. It always good policy to follow. You get the screws. They just put them one by one and try every nut, every screw, whether they work properly or not. Because sometimes you go to assemble, then you get into these kind of problems. So you don't want that. And pretty much you are set to do on this volume 3, assembling drones. I have given you what's the basic that you need to get this going. There are a few other things that I want to bring up to your attention. Now, of course, you know the frames are carbon fiber. Those days we were on the planes. It was an aluminium alloy called Dural we used, but the newer stuff coming to be getting the usage. At least they are being used. And one other thing, to get these streamlines, of course you can go to I have listed them out, HobbyKim, Banggood and Amazon. When you talk about Amazon, I thoroughly urge you to get the Prime of Amazon. Why I say that is, you are going on in the assembly line, and then you don't want to you don't want to tie up all your money. Meaning you have one drone already ready, but you don't have the battery and the control or the radio, which is a high ticket item. Once you get the order, is the next day they will deliver if you have the Prime. So if you are in the US, have the Prime Amazon, and if there are other countries also. If the Prime is available on Amazon, take it, I would say. Then there's a few other things I really noted to bring to your attention. Binding, and of course fail-safe. You definitely come to know about the fail-safe. It's very nicely detailed and described in the software programs like Betaflight or OpenPilot or Flight Mission. What really happens? What really you are doing on fail-safe is if the transmitter loses connections, it totally brings the drone down. You can bring it down just as it is, right to the same spot, heading it to the ground, or you can do other things. But my suggestion is, as a XAR Force personnel, my suggestion is just bring it down. Think about the fighter pilot. When the plane is shot, what does he do? He just ejects the flight. So just bring it down. That's the safest thing. There's no other thing as far as I'm concerned. You got to do. And binding, binding. Of course, I think people are getting more familiar because you always use the Bluetooth. What do? You do binding, right? So similar thing. Process is very easy. Sorry, let me withdraw. It's not easy, but it's explained well in all these software programs. And then on the binding, if you get the red light solid, that means yes, even before I say that, always it reminds for you to update the firmware and the software, and always do that. And if the binding is are not established properly, and you get the power red light coming right through, it could be the version difference of the region, like once firmware in the transmitter, you may have EU software, EU update, and on your receiver it could be the US one or the international one. So that's one thing you got to check if the binding does not go the way you want. So we were talking about don't invest too much on the test gears and the rigs and all that, test rigs and all that. Telemetry also I want to mention here transmits a lot of information other than your FPV, other than your video, other things about your craft. It'll transmit to the base. That's another good thing. And when once again, this is a point that before you think of what kind of a drone that your assembly line, we are going to go for 10. What are you going to start with? Whether it is a stunt one, whether it is a racing one, or heavy lifting, or aerial photograph or FPV. I would rather stay with aerial photograph and FPV, because if it is racing and stunt and all that, they've been done by most of the enthusiasts. They do research themselves. So the better chance of from the market standpoint, to stick to FPV and aerial photograph. You will be better off with that. And thank you very much, and we will complete this module. We will see you once you do the quiz. We will see you in the next module, and we'll be in the module 4. We'll be discussing weather. That's another very good subject. Thank you.